"Get off this land right now." That's what she screamed at me, waving a clipboard like it was a badge while 3 SUVs with flashing amber lights boxed me in on my uncle's old cabin porch. For a second, I froze my coffee, almost spilling because it looked like some kind of police raid. Except, this wasn't a crime scene. This was my land, the place I had just inherited 3 weeks earlier, and suddenly the HOA was acting like they owned it. The morning mist hadn't even lifted when those SUVs rolled up my driveway like they were on some tactical mission. Out stepped this woman in her late 40s, hair pulled tight in a bun blazer, sharp enough to slice bread every pore, radiating authority she didn't actually have. She introduced herself as Malene Pierce, chairwoman of the Riverside Meadows HOA, announcing I was in unauthorized occupation. Behind her, a guy named Derek was stringing yellow caution tape between trees like he was blocking off a crime scene. I looked around, dumbfounded, clutching my mug that literally said "World's Best Uncle," wondering if I'd somehow woken up in a parody of Law and Order. When I demanded credentials, Derek fumbled with his vest like a teenager trying to hide bad homework. That's when I noticed a small metal sign hammered into my property marker, "Chairwoman Reserved Parking." On my land. My blood pressure spiked so fast I thought my head might explode. I pulled out my phone, started recording, catching Derek's fake badge and Malene's power trip clipboard. She tried blocking the camera, hissing about community safety jurisdiction, but her voice cracked just enough to betray the panic beneath her mask. Right then, a neighbor, Rebecca Shaw, pulled up in her truck, waving a receipt confusion all over her face. "Nate, what's going on?" "What's with all the lights?" she asked. I deadpanned back. Apparently it's a compliance inspection by volunteers with clipboards. Rebecca's face darkened with recognition. She muttered something about suspicious landscaping fees, and that's when I knew this circus wasn't just about me. Something bigger was going on. The convoy finally pulled away. Amber lights sweeping across my porch one last time, but the damage was done. I stood there, gripping my coffee, realizing I'd just been declared an intruder on my own inherited land. 2 hours later, the moving truck showed up and found my driveway blocked by the same SUV parked sideways like a barricade. The driver tapped his meter, shaking his head. "Time's ticking, buddy. I can't sit here all day while you sort out neighborhood drama." And that's when I spotted her. Malene, half hidden behind an oak tree 60 yards out, crouching like some suburban spy, shifting every time I moved. When I circled my property, she circled too. When I stopped, she ducked lower. I swear she thought she was running a surveillance op, but to me it was like being stalked by the world's worst private investigator. As I wandered toward the pump house by the back boundary, I stumbled across a wooden box marked Facilities Access. Inside old rusty keys my uncle must have left. One fit the heavy padlock on the pump house. The door creaked open, and inside I found not abandoned junk, but pipes, electrical systems recently maintained, and tucked in the back a filing cabinet. When I pried it open, what I saw made my stomach twist. Lease agreements, all signed by my uncle and countersigned by Malene Pierce. Turns out, the HOA had been renting that pump house and mailbox cluster from my family, paying monthly fees, meaning everything they claimed authority over was sitting on land that didn't belong to them. I photographed every document, my pulse racing when I heard faint radio chatter outside. "Keep watching him. Document everything he touches." They were spying on me in real time on my own property. I slammed the cabinet shut, heart hammering, realizing why Malene had been stalking me from the trees. She wasn't just flexing HOA muscle, she was protecting a scam. That night, I spread the papers across my uncle's dining table, the smell of his old pipe tobacco still lingering. Receipts, patrol records, financial breakdowns. Over $6,000 in unauthorized spending patrol gear radios. Certifications that didn't exist. My uncle had fought them for years, sending letters politely refusing their demands for more control. His final note was tucked at the bottom, written weeks before he passed. "If they intimidate you, call the sheriff. If they claim your land, show them the truth. These people have forgotten the difference between authority and theater." I sat back staring at those words, and for the first time since moving in, doubt hit me like a gut punch. Maybe I'd made a mistake coming here. Maybe I should just pack up, sell the place, let them have their ridiculous little kingdom. I was outnumbered, isolated with a woman who clearly had no problem staging fake raids to scare me off. For a moment, I wanted to quit. But then, I pictured my uncle stubborn and sharp-eyed standing exactly where I was, now refusing to bow to their nonsense. This wasn't just my fight, it was his unfinished one. I couldn't walk away. The next day, Rebecca called nervous but determined. She'd been tracking HOA expenses as part of her treasurer duties and found unexplained charges thousands for patrol equipment, bogus certifications, and inflated facility fees. When I told her about the lease agreements, her voice steadied. "Nate, this isn't just shady, this is fraud." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. Grant Morgan, another neighbor, had recordings of HOA radio chatter from his morning dog walks. Piece by piece, we were building a case. When word spread about a community meeting at the mailbox cluster ironically on my land, I decided not to hide. I walked straight into their circle. 15 residents gathered around Malene holding court like some suburban dictator, Derek, lurking behind her like rent-a-cop security. "Please, don't stop on my account," I said, settling onto a bench my uncle had installed years ago. "I'm curious what the community thinks about holding meetings on private property." The word "my" hung in the air like a thunderclap. Rebecca stepped forward, waving budget sheets. "Malene, where's the approval for a $3,500 patrol equipment purchase?" Murmurs rippled through the group. Another neighbor asked, "Wait, Derek isn't certified." "Then what are we paying for?" The mask was slipping. I kept quiet, letting the community ask their own questions, watching Malene's jaw tighten as cracks spread across her authority facade. That's when I set the stage. I called in Deputy Mark Lewis County Sheriff's Office. He specialized in rural property disputes, the kind of man who didn't flinch at HOA theatrics. The next day, as I measured my boundary markers with a tape measure fully visible to every watchful eye, Derek rolled up in his SUV, flashing his fake badge again. Malene wasn't far behind, hauling radios and strobes like she was about to launch another performance. Deputy Lewis arrived right on time, uniform crisp, real badge glinting. He listened as I explained, then we walked toward the pump house together. Derek stepped forward, voice booming, "Sir, you need to stop and submit to a compliance review. This area falls under HOA jurisdiction." He raised his badge like it meant something. And then Lewis stepped into view. The change was instant. Derek's confidence drained faster than air from a punctured tire. "I'm Deputy Lewis County Sheriff," he said calmly. "Let's see your credentials for property inspections." Derek stammered, fumbling with his badge, mumbling about certified volunteers. Lewis pressed harder. "What agency certified you? What statute gives you authority to inspect private property without a warrant?" Derek paled, his hands shaking. Rebecca stepped forward, pulling spreadsheets from her folder. "Deputy, according to our records, over $4,000 was spent on equipment and services never approved by the board." Grant chimed in with his audio recordings of radio chatter neighbors gasping as they realized they'd been surveilled by their own HOA. Lewis looked Derek dead in the eye. "Impersonating law enforcement is a criminal offense. Demanding identification and conducting inspections without authority, serious violations. You could be facing charges." Malene tried stepping in, but her voice cracked. "Deputy, there's been a misunderstanding. He's just a volunteer." But it was too late. Derek had already played cop in front of an actual one. The performance was over. 2 days later, Rebecca posted the financial breakdown at the local feed store, the unofficial town square. Color-coded charts showing every fraudulent expense. People read it like it was juicier than the weekly farm report. Malene's SUV pulled up, but she sat inside for a long time before finally walking over. The woman who had once stormed my porch now looked like someone standing at the gallows. She muttered about private financial matters, but nobody bought it. The community had seen the receipts. I drafted an official notice 3 days to remove all unauthorized equipment, provide receipts, and explain the fake patrol scheme or face termination and legal action. I attached Lewis's report, Rebecca's spreadsheets, photos of Derek's badge. The evidence was airtight. When the deadline came, the community gathered at the mailbox cluster again. Lewis was there, Rebecca with her folder, Grant with his recorder. I stood in front of them all and held up my uncle's note. The patrol program and mailbox operations have never been legitimate HOA projects. They've been on private land, my land, the entire time. And you've all been charged for services that don't exist. The reaction was immediate anger betrayal voices rising in unison. Residents realized they'd been scammed for years. Malene stepped out of her SUV, no longer the queen of the cul-de-sac, but a woman cornered, desperate, defeated. I walked to the property marker, yanked down the chairwoman reserved sign, and revealed the original metal plate beneath visitor parking only. My uncle's quiet revenge, still waiting for the right moment. "This scheme is terminated," I announced. "All HOA equipment must be removed within 24 hours, effective immediately." Rebecca called for an emergency board meeting to remove Malene from all leadership positions. Hands shot up in agreement. Even Derek just stared at his fake badge, useless now, like a kid caught playing dress-up. Lewis confirmed the verdict with the final word: "The compliance program is disbanded. Any further impersonation will be prosecuted." His voice carried like a gavel strike, and with that, it was over. As neighbors tore down the last strips of caution tape, I walked back to the cabin, silence settling over the meadow. For the first time since inheriting this place, the land felt truly mine, not a stage for someone else's authority theater. The lesson, real authority doesn't need a clipboard or flashing lights, it's built on truth. And bullies only win when people let them.